The hidden years it began innocently, as most revelations do. A misaligned calendar event on a shared app. A curious note tucked away in a drawer long untouched. The signs were subtle at first, easily brushed off as the natural entropy of a long marriage. After all, 20 years had passed since Alex and Claire had exchanged vows beneath a cerulean sky, promising forever. Alex was no stranger to life's complexities. As a writer by trade, he often delved into human behavior and relationships, crafting stories about love, betrayal, and redemption. Yet even the most skilled storyteller can be blind to the plot lines unfolding in their own life. It was a chance encounter with Claire's old work diary that turned the tide. One lazy Saturday, Alex was tidying up the attic when he stumbled upon a box marked Memories. He hesitated. Nostalgia often brought a mix of joy and melancholy, but curiosity won. Inside lay a collection of journals, photos, and keepsakes. Among them, the diary stood out, its leather cover worn and edges frayed. Alex opened it, expecting mundane notes about meetings and deadlines. Instead, he found entries that painted a vivid picture of her work life. One name appeared repeatedly: Martin, her boss. At first, the mentions were harmless: a shared lunch, brainstorming sessions, team outings. But as Alex read on, the tone shifted. Subtle phrases hinted at something deeper. Martin stayed late to help me finish the presentation. He's always so attentive, and it's nice to feel appreciated. Today, Martin brought me coffee just the way I like it. It feels good to have someone notice the little things. The entries were peppered with compliments and moments that, in isolation, seemed innocuous. But together, they told a story that Alex couldn't ignore. Over the next few weeks, Alex became a detective in his own life. He sifted through phone records, observed Claire's behavior, and revisited moments that had once seemed unremarkable. A pattern emerged: business trips that coincided with Martin's, unexplained absences, and an emotional distance that had grown over the years. The final piece of the puzzle came when Alex, heart pounding, decided to confront Claire. He approached her with evidence in hand: a mix of diary entries, old text messages he had hesitated to read but ultimately couldn't ignore, and questions that had been simmering in his mind for weeks. The confrontation was raw and painful. Claire's initial denial crumbled under the weight of the evidence. She confessed, tears streaming down her face, that the affair had begun 2 decades ago, shortly after they were married. It had started as a fleeting mistake, fueled by the thrill of newness and the pressures of a demanding job. Over time, it had evolved into a complicated web of emotions, guilt, and secrecy. For Alex, the betrayal was staggering. But what followed was equally unexpected. As they sat together in the quiet aftermath of her confession, they began to talk. Not just about the affair, but about the cracks in their marriage that had gone unnoticed. The journey that followed was anything but easy. Therapy sessions were fraught with anger and tears, but they also unearthed a deeper understanding of each other. Alex learned to confront his own shortcomings, times when he had been emotionally unavailable, buried in his work, or blind to Claire's struggles. Claire, in turn, faced the consequences of her actions and began the arduous process of rebuilding trust. In the end, their story wasn't about the affair itself, but about the resilience of the human spirit. They chose to rewrite their narrative, not as victims or villains, but as 2 flawed individuals striving to find their way back to each other. And though the scars of betrayal would never fully fade, they became reminders of a love that, though tested, had endured, rebuilding the ruins. The days after the confrontation were a blur of emotions for Alex. Anger simmered beneath the surface, while sadness wrapped itself around him like a heavy fog. Claire, for her part, was an open wound, her guilt manifesting in tearful apologies and attempts to reconnect. But trust, once shattered, was not easily restored. At first, Alex considered leaving. The weight of 20 years of deception was unbearable. He sought solace in long walks through the park and late-night journaling sessions, pouring his thoughts onto the page. Writing had always been his sanctuary, but now it felt like the only place he could make sense of the chaos. One evening, as Alex sat on the back porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Claire approached him. She held a small box in her hands, one he hadn't seen in years. "I found this in the attic," she said softly, setting it down on the table between them. Alex opened the box to find a collection of letters they had written to each other in the early days of their relationship. Each one was filled with dreams, promises, and the kind of unfiltered love that felt almost foreign now. "Do you remember how we used to write to each other?" Claire asked, her voice trembling. "Before life got so complicated?" Alex nodded, his throat tight. "I want to start again," she said. "Writing, talking, anything to help us find our way back to each other." Reluctantly, Alex agreed. It was a small step, but it marked the beginning of their effort to rebuild what had been lost. The letters. The first few letters were stilted, filled with tentative phrases and guarded emotions. Claire wrote about her guilt and her desire to make amends. Alex wrote about his pain, his anger, and the betrayal that felt like an anchor dragging him down. But as the weeks turned into months, the letters began to change. They became less about the past and more about the present, small moments of gratitude, observations about their day, and reflections on the progress they were making. They also started attending therapy together. Their counselor, a patient and empathetic woman named Dr. Rivera, guided them through the labyrinth of their emotions. She encouraged them to be honest, not just with each other, but with themselves. It was during one of these sessions that Claire revealed a deeper truth about her affair with Martin. "I think I was searching for something I thought I'd lost," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I felt invisible, like I wasn't enough. And Martin, he made me feel seen." Alex listened, his chest tightening. For the first time, he realized that the affair wasn't just a betrayal, it was a symptom of a larger problem. Their marriage had been on autopilot for years, each of them retreating into their own worlds instead of facing their struggles together. The turning point one evening, Claire suggested they revisit a place that had once been special to them, the small cabin by the lake where they had spent their honeymoon. It was a bold move, considering the emotional landmines that still littered their relationship, but Alex agreed. The cabin was exactly as they remembered it, rustic and cozy, with a view of the lake that seemed to stretch into forever. As they sat by the fire that night, Claire reached for Alex's hand. "I know I can't erase what I've done," she said, her voice breaking, "but I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you that I'm worthy of your forgiveness." Alex looked at her, the firelight reflecting in her tear-filled eyes. For the first time, he allowed himself to believe that healing was possible. "It's not going to be easy," he said, "and I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive you. But I'm willing to try. A new beginning." The journey that followed was far from perfect. There were setbacks and moments of doubt, but there were also glimmers of hope, shared laughter, meaningful conversations, and a growing sense of connection. Alex began to see Claire not as the woman who had betrayed him, but as a flawed human being capable of change. And Claire, in turn, worked tirelessly to rebuild the trust she had broken, learning to confront her own insecurities and communicate openly. In time, their marriage transformed into something new, not a return to what it had been, but an evolution into something stronger. And though the scars of the past would always remain, they became reminders of a love that had been tested in the fire and had emerged against all odds, intact. Echoes of trust. The cabin by the lake became a sanctuary for Alex and Claire. They returned there every few months, carving out time to focus on each other and their progress. It was a place where they could strip away the noise of the outside world and face the raw truth of their relationship. But even with these retreats, the road ahead was rocky. Alex couldn't silence the doubts that crept in at unexpected moments. A late phone call, a casual mention of Claire's office, or a fleeting memory of her betrayal. Trust, he realized, wasn't something that could be rebuilt quickly. It would take years. One evening, as they sat by the lake, Alex voiced what had been gnawing at him. "Do you think I'll ever stop wondering?" he asked, staring at the rippling water. Claire hesitated before answering. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I'll keep showing up every day to remind you that I'm here for us, that I choose us." Her words resonated with Alex. She was no longer the woman who had lied and hidden parts of herself. She was someone willing to do the hard work of rebuilding, brick by painful brick. Confronting the past months later, a twist in their story came when Martin re-entered their lives. Claire received an email from him, an innocuous message about an old project she had worked on at the company. She showed it to Alex immediately, her hands trembling as she handed him her phone. "I didn't respond," she said quickly. "I didn't even open it until now, but I thought you should know." Alex felt a surge of emotions, anger, fear, and a strange sense of relief. Claire's transparency was a stark contrast to the secrecy of the past. "Do you want to reply?" he asked after a moment. "No," Claire said firmly. "There's nothing he could say that would matter. My life is here, with you." It was a small but significant victory, one that reinforced Alex's belief that they were moving in the right direction. The letter they never sent in therapy, Dr. Rivera suggested that Claire write a letter to Martin, not to send, but as a way to confront her past and solidify her commitment to Alex. Claire poured her heart into the letter, addressing the hurt she had caused and the damage their affair had inflicted on her marriage. She wrote about the emptiness she had felt, despite their connection, and the profound regret that haunted her. When she finished, she read the letter aloud to Alex during one of their therapy sessions. Her voice wavered, but her words were resolute. By the time she finished, Alex was silent. He didn't feel triumphant or vindicated, but he did feel a weight lift, a sense that Claire was truly letting go of the life she had shared with Martin. "I think it's time to burn it," Claire said, folding the letter carefully. Together, they walked outside to their fire pit. Alex lit a match, and Claire held the letter over the flames. As the paper curled and blackened, Alex felt a strange sense of closure. A new chapter years passed, and the scars of the betrayal softened. Alex and Claire's marriage was no longer defined by the affair, but by the resilience they had shown in its aftermath. They became advocates for honest communication, often sharing their story with close friends who were struggling in their own relationships. Their vulnerability inspired others to confront their own fears and seek help when needed. And though Alex would always carry the memory of those painful days, he found that they no longer held the same power over him. He had chosen to forgive, not to forget, but to free himself from the weight of bitterness. As they celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary, surrounded by friends and family, Alex looked at Claire and saw not the woman who had betrayed him, but the partner who had fought alongside him to rebuild their lives. Their love wasn't perfect. It wasn't without flaws or cracks, but it was real, enduring, and most importantly, chosen. Every single day. Martin's reflection. Martin sat alone in his corner office, the city skyline stretching endlessly before him. It was a view he had once cherished, a symbol of his success and hard work. But tonight, it felt hollow. The years had been kind to him on the surface. He was still the CEO, still respected, still charming in that way that had opened so many doors. Yet, beneath the polished exterior lay the weight of choices he wished he could undo. The email he had sent to Claire weeks ago, innocuous as it seemed, had been his way of testing the waters. He hadn't expected a reply, but part of him hoped for one. The silence that followed confirmed what he already knew. That chapter of his life was closed. Still, Martin couldn't shake the memories of those years. He had been drawn to Claire's brilliance, her quiet strength, and the way she saw him, not just as a boss, but as a man. Their affair had started during a turbulent time in his own life. His marriage was crumbling under the weight of indifference, and he felt unseen in his personal and professional worlds. Claire had been a bright spark in that darkness. But sparks, he realized too late, had a way of burning everything around them. The fallout. When the affair ended, Martin had tried to compartmentalize the guilt. He buried himself in work, convincing himself that he had done what was necessary to preserve both their careers. But every so often he would hear whispers of Claire's life, through mutual colleagues, the occasional photo on social media, or a passing mention at a corporate event. He knew she had stayed with her husband, Alex, and while part of him admired her resilience, another part envied her ability to move forward. Martin, on the other hand, had struggled to rebuild his own life. His divorce had been finalized years ago, leaving him with a string of shallow relationships that only deepened his loneliness. A chance encounter fate had a way of weaving unexpected threads into life's tapestry. Martin ran into Alex at a conference one crisp autumn afternoon. He recognized him immediately, though they had never met in person. Alex, to his credit, didn't flinch. He extended a hand, his grip firm but not hostile. "Martin, right?" Alex said, his tone neutral. Martin nodded, unsure of what to say. The air between them was heavy with unspoken words. "I know who you are," Alex continued. "And I know what happened." Martin's chest tightened. He opened his mouth to respond, but Alex held up a hand. "I'm not here to rehash the past," Alex said. "But I think you should know. Claire and I are doing well. We've worked hard to get to where we are, and I'm proud of her for the changes she's made." Martin swallowed hard, a mix of relief and regret washing over him. "That's good to hear," he said finally. "She's an incredible woman. You're lucky to have her." "I know," Alex replied, his gaze steady. "And I don't need to tell you to stay away. Claire made her choice a long time ago." With that, Alex turned and walked away, leaving Martin alone with his thoughts. A lesson learned as Martin watched Alex disappear into the crowd. He felt an unexpected sense of closure. The encounter, brief as it was, had given him a clarity he hadn't realized he needed. He returned to his office that evening and began writing, a habit he hadn't indulged in years. His words weren't meant for anyone but himself, a way to process the choices he had made and the lessons he had learned. In the end, Martin came to understand that his affair with Claire had been less about her and more about his own emptiness. And while he couldn't undo the damage he had caused, he could choose to live differently moving forward. For the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope. Not for redemption, but for the possibility of becoming a better man. Martin's transformation. Martin's days became quieter but more intentional after that chance meeting with Alex. The confrontation, if it could even be called that, left him reevaluating not only the choices he had made, but the kind of man he wanted to become. He started small. Each evening, he wrote in a journal reflecting on his past and setting goals for the future. He wasn't looking for absolution. He knew some wounds, particularly those he had inflicted on others, might never heal. But he wanted to live with integrity moving forward, to fill the void that had led him down such a destructive path. Seeking forgiveness, one step in his transformation was seeking forgiveness, not from Claire or Alex. He knew better than to reopen old wounds, but from those he had hurt in his own orbit. His ex-wife, Elena, was at the top of that list. Their marriage had ended long before the affair with Claire, but his emotional unavailability and constant prioritization of work over family had left deep scars. Martin reached out with caution, sending Elena a letter. "Dear Elena, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on the person I was when we were together, and I owe you an apology. I failed you in ways I didn't understand at the time. choosing my ambition over our partnership, shutting you out when you needed me most. You deserved better, and I am sorry for the pain I caused you. I don't expect anything from this message, but I wanted you to know that I see the mistakes I made and regret them deeply. Martin, a week later, Elena responded. Her message was brief but kind. Martin, thank you for your words. It's taken me a long time to heal, but I'm in a good place now. I hope you find peace in your journey too. Elena. Her forgiveness, even in its quiet simplicity, felt like a small weight lifted, a new purpose. With time, Martin began to channel his energy into something more meaningful. He stepped back from his role as CEO, passing the torch to a younger, more vibrant leader, and shifted his focus to mentoring others. He started volunteering with a nonprofit that supported young professionals navigating ethical challenges in the workplace. His experience, painful as it had been, gave him unique insight into the temptations and pitfalls that could derail careers and lives. One evening, after giving a talk to a group of interns, a young woman approached him. "Your story really resonated with me," she said. "It's easy to feel like one mistake could define your entire life, but you've shown that it doesn't have to." Her words stayed with Martin. For the first time in years, he felt that his past, while filled with missteps, might serve a purpose beyond regret. The unexpected letter months later, Martin received a letter that stopped him in his tracks. It was from Claire. "Martin, I thought long and hard before writing this, but I felt it was important to close this chapter completely. Alex and I have rebuilt our lives, and I'm grateful every day for the second chance we've given each other. I hope you found a way to move forward as well. I won't lie. The hurt we caused will always be a part of my story, but it's also a reminder of how much I value the life I've chosen to protect. Thank you for not trying to reach out after all these years. I wish you peace and fulfillment in your life. Claire." The letter was a testament to the growth they had both undergone. Martin folded it carefully and placed it in his desk drawer, feeling an odd mixture of relief and finality. A life redeemed in. The years that followed, Martin continued to redefine himself. He found joy in the small things: a morning walk in the park, a cup of coffee shared with a friend, a heartfelt conversation with a mentee. Though he would never forget the choices that had shaped his past, he no longer allowed them to define his future. One crisp autumn morning, as he stood on the balcony of his modest new apartment, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: contentment. It wasn't the kind born of perfection or success, but of a life lived with intention and an open heart. For Martin, it wasn't about redemption in the eyes of others. It was about becoming someone he could respect when he looked in the mirror, and for the first time in decades, he felt he had succeeded. A meeting of strangers. A chilly winter afternoon, Martin found himself in a small cafe near his apartment. It was one of those cozy places that seemed to invite quiet reflection, with its soft lighting, mismatched furniture, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. As he waited for his order, he noticed a woman struggling to balance her coffee, laptop bag, and a stack of books. Without thinking, he stepped forward to help. "Here, let me," he said, steadying the precarious stack. The woman looked up, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "Thank you. I always overestimate my ability to juggle things." Martin chuckled. We've all been there. They exchanged smiles, and Martin felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years, a genuine connection. Sophia's story. Her name was Sophia, a professor of ethics at a nearby university. Over the next hour, as they shared their stories, Martin learned that she had recently left a long-term relationship and was navigating the unfamiliar terrain of starting over. "I spent so much time building a life with someone else," she said, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "Now I'm trying to figure out who I am on my own." Martin nodded, understanding all too well. "It's not easy," he said, "but sometimes starting over is the best thing you can do for yourself." They parted ways that day with a promise to meet again, and over the next few months, their friendship grew. Kindred spirits, Sophia and Martin became each other's confidants, sharing late-night conversations about their pasts, their fears, and their hopes for the future. Sophia's warmth and curiosity drew Martin out of his shell, while Martin's hard-earned wisdom gave Sophia the courage to face her own uncertainties. One evening, as they walked through the snow-dusted park near Sophia's apartment, she turned to him. "You've lived so much life," she said. "Do you ever feel like it's too late to start something new?" Martin paused, considering her question. "I used to think so," he admitted, "but now I believe that every day is a chance to begin again. The trick is to let go of the fear that you've missed your chance." Sophia smiled. "Maybe you're right." A new chapter together. Their bond deepened, and what began as friendship slowly blossomed into something more. Martin found himself drawn to Sophia's resilience and passion for life, while Sophia admired Martin's capacity for growth and his willingness to confront his flaws. When they finally acknowledged their feelings for each other, it was with a sense of cautious optimism. They both knew the weight of their pasts, but chose to embrace the possibility of a future together. Building something real. In the years that followed, Martin and Sophia built a life defined not by grand gestures, but by the quiet strength of their partnership. They supported each other's passions. Martin continued mentoring young professionals, while Sophia expanded her work in ethics education to include corporate workshops. Their shared experiences and mutual respect became the foundation of a love that was honest, imperfect, and deeply fulfilling. And though Martin's past would always be a part of him, it no longer defined him. With Sophia by his side, he found a sense of peace and purpose he had once thought impossible. Bridges of understanding Sophia was the first person Martin had truly opened up to about his affair with Claire. It wasn't an easy conversation. His voice faltered as he recounted the details, the hurt he had caused, and the long path to redemption he had walked since. When he finished, Sophia was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice steady. "You're not the same man who made those mistakes," she said. "But the fact that you carry them with you shows how much you've grown. I respect that, Martin." Her words were a balm to a part of him that still ached with guilt. It wasn't absolution. He didn't want that, but her understanding gave him the courage to keep moving forward. A chance reunion. One spring afternoon, while attending a conference with Sophia, Martin found himself face-to-face with Claire and Alex. The encounter was unexpected, and for a moment the air was thick with tension. Alex's gaze was steady, but there was no hostility in his eyes. Claire, too, seemed composed, though Martin noticed a flicker of surprise in her expression. "Martin," Alex said, extending a hand. "Good to see you again." Martin shook his hand, his voice calm but sincere. "Alex, Claire, I hope you're both doing well." Claire nodded, her smile small but genuine. "We are. Thank you." Sophia, sensing the significance of the moment, introduced herself. "I'm Sophia," she said, offering her hand to Claire and Alex. Alex's expression softened. "It's nice to meet you, Sophia." The conversation was brief but cordial, and as they parted ways, Martin felt an unexpected sense of closure. Later, Sophia asked about the meeting. "I think it was the universe's way of showing me how far I've come," Martin said. "And how far they've come too," Sophia added. An invitation. Months later, Alex and Claire reached out with an unexpected proposal. They wanted Martin and Sophia to join a panel discussion on ethical dilemmas and personal growth at an upcoming event. "It's not just about the past," Claire wrote in her email. "It's about how we've all learned and grown from it." Martin hesitated, unsure if he could face such a public acknowledgement of his mistakes. But Sophia encouraged him. "This isn't about airing your guilt," she said. "It's about showing how you've turned it into something meaningful." Together, they accepted the invitation. The panel. The event was held in a large auditorium filled with professionals, students, and others eager to hear stories of resilience and ethical transformation. Martin spoke candidly about his journey, from the choices that led to his affair to the steps he had taken to rebuild his integrity. Alex and Claire shared their perspective as a couple who had chosen to fight for their marriage despite the pain. Sophia brought a unique voice to the discussion, emphasizing the importance of empathy and understanding in personal and professional relationships. The audience was captivated, their questions thoughtful and probing. One attendee asked, "What's the biggest lesson you've all learned from this experience?" Claire answered first. "That forgiveness is a choice, and it's one you have to make every day, not just for others but for yourself," Alex added. "And that trust, while fragile, can be rebuilt if both people are willing to do the work." Martin's voice was steady as he spoke. "For me, it's the understanding that our mistakes don't define us. What defines us is how we choose to move forward," Sophia smiled. "And that even in the hardest moments, there's always a chance to start again." Moving forward together. The panel marked a turning point, not just for Martin, but for all of them. It was a testament to the power of growth, resilience, and connection. In the weeks that followed, Martin and Sophia continued to deepen their bond, building a life grounded in honesty and mutual respect. Claire and Alex, too, found solace in the fact that their story had inspired others to confront their own challenges. And though their lives were separate, they would always share a thread of connection, a reminder that even from pain, something meaningful could emerge. Unexpected collaboration. Months after the panel, Claire reached out to Sophia with an intriguing proposal. "Sophia, your perspective on ethical decision-making and empathy struck a chord with so many people at the event," she wrote in an email. "I've been considering developing a corporate workshop series on navigating ethical dilemmas in leadership. Would you be interested in collaborating?" Sophia shared the idea with Martin, who immediately encouraged her to pursue it. "You've always been passionate about this work," he said, "and Claire clearly values your insight." Though hesitant at first, aware of Martin's history with Claire, Sophia decided to accept. She and Claire began working closely together, designing a curriculum that combined theoretical knowledge with real-world examples. Revisiting the past one evening, while reviewing materials at Claire's office, Sophia noticed a photo on Claire's desk. It was of Claire and Alex, standing arm in arm, both looking happier than Sophia had ever seen them. "You and Alex have a beautiful connection," Sophia said, gesturing to the photo. Claire smiled, her expression thoughtful. "It hasn't always been easy, but rebuilding our marriage taught us how to truly communicate and prioritize each other. I think we're stronger now than we ever were before." Sophia nodded, feeling a newfound respect for Claire. "It's inspiring to see how far you've both come." Claire hesitated before speaking again. "I wasn't sure if working with you would bring back too much of the past," she admitted. "But I'm glad we've had this chance. It's helped me see how much we've all grown." Martin's new role. Meanwhile, Martin had taken on a new project of his own. Inspired by his work mentoring young professionals, he partnered with a nonprofit to create a leadership program for underprivileged youth. His goal was to teach not only skills but also the importance of ethical decision-making and emotional intelligence in leadership. One day he invited Alex to join him as a guest speaker. "I think your perspective on rebuilding trust and resilience would resonate with these kids," Martin said. Alex agreed, and the experience proved transformative for both of them. As they worked together, they discovered a shared commitment to empowering others and a surprising camaraderie born of mutual respect. The Four Paths, Converge months later, Martin, Sophia, Claire, and Alex found themselves at another crossroads. A major conference on ethics and leadership invited all four to host a joint keynote session. At first, they hesitated. Their shared history was deeply personal, and the thought of presenting as a unified team felt daunting, but they ultimately agreed, recognizing the potential to inspire others with their story of growth, forgiveness, and collaboration. During the keynote, they each shared their unique perspectives. Claire spoke about the importance of vulnerability and honesty in rebuilding relationships. Alex emphasized the power of persistence and the daily effort required to sustain trust. Sophia highlighted empathy as a cornerstone of ethical leadership. Martin reflected on the value of second chances and the courage it takes to change. The audience was moved, many approaching them afterward to share how their stories had resonated on a personal level. A future full of possibilities, the conference marked a turning point in their collective journey. Though their paths would diverge again, the connections they had rebuilt would remain. Martin and Sophia continued to build their life together, their relationship grounded in trust and mutual growth. Claire and Alex became sought-after speakers on resilience in relationships, sharing their story to inspire others facing similar challenges. Together, the four of them proved that even the most painful experiences could lead to something meaningful and enduring. The ethical crisis 1 year after their joint keynote session, Claire and Sophia's corporate workshop series gained national attention. Companies across industries invited them to speak, and their influence in the field of ethical leadership grew. During one such engagement with a major tech company, they uncovered troubling information. The company was developing artificial intelligence software with significant ethical implications. Its potential misuse could infringe on privacy rights and exacerbate social inequalities. Claire and Sophia were faced with a dilemma. They had been hired as consultants, and revealing these findings publicly could jeopardize their credibility and breach their professional agreements. Yet staying silent felt like complicity. Sophia immediately turned to Martin for advice. "This could ruin everything we've worked for," she said. "But how can we ignore it?" Martin, who had always emphasized integrity in his mentoring, didn't hesitate. "You've built your careers on doing the right thing, no matter the cost. This is one of those moments where the stakes are high, but so is the potential for impact." Claire reached out to Alex, seeking his perspective. His experience rebuilding trust in their marriage gave him a unique lens. "You have to be transparent," Alex said. "Not just with the company, but with yourselves. If you act with integrity now, you'll be able to stand by your decision no matter the fallout." A collective action. The four of them decided to approach the company's leadership together, presenting their concerns and suggesting actionable steps to mitigate the risks. Their proposal included creating an independent ethics committee to oversee the AI's development and engaging external stakeholders to ensure transparency. The company's executives were initially resistant, fearing bad press and financial losses. But Martin, leveraging his years of experience as a CEO, delivered a compelling argument. Ethics isn't just about doing what's right, it's also good business. Trust is the foundation of any successful enterprise, and if you lose it, no innovation will save you. Their combined efforts swayed the executives, who agreed to implement the proposed changes. Ripple effects news of the company's decision spread, and it became a case study in ethical leadership. Claire and Sophia's reputations soared, cementing their status as thought leaders in their field. Martin's leadership program received a surge in interest, with companies seeking his guidance on fostering ethical cultures. Even Alex, who had largely remained in the background professionally, found himself drawn into the conversation. He began developing workshops on resilience and trust building in organizational settings, inspired by his personal journey. A deeper bond. The experience strengthened the bond between the four of them. What had started as a shared history marked by pain and betrayal had transformed into a partnership built on mutual respect and a shared commitment to making a difference. One evening, as they gathered for dinner at Sophia and Martin's home, Claire raised a toast. "To growth," she said, "and to the unexpected connections that shape our lives." Martin added, "and to choosing the harder path when it's the right one." They clinked glasses, their laughter filling the room, a sound that echoed not just joy, but the resilience and strength they had all fought to achieve. A new betrayal years had passed, and life had settled into a steady rhythm for Martin, Sophia, Claire, and Alex. Their professional lives thrived, and their relationships had grown stronger, or so it seemed. But beneath the surface of this apparent harmony, cracks were beginning to form. Suspicion in plain sight. Martin and Sophia had built a relationship founded on honesty, but as their respective careers became more demanding, they began spending less time together. Martin noticed subtle changes in Sophia's behavior. Her phone was always face down on the table. Her work trips seemed longer than necessary, and she seemed emotionally distant. At first, Martin dismissed his suspicions as paranoia, a ghost of his own past mistakes. But when Sophia canceled a planned weekend together to attend a last-minute work retreat, Martin felt a familiar pang in his chest, the doubt he had once inflicted on someone else. The discovery, unable to shake the feeling, Martin confided in Alex. "I don't want to accuse her unfairly," Martin said, "but I can't ignore these signs." Alex, who had become a trusted confidant over the years, advised caution. "Talk to her," he said, "but make sure you're coming from a place of understanding, not accusation." Martin decided to wait until Sophia returned from her trip. But one evening, while working late at home, an email notification popped up on their shared tablet. It was a message from one of Sophia's colleagues, a man Martin had met briefly at a conference. The tone was overly familiar, and the contents hinted at a deeper connection than Martin had suspected: confrontation and confession. When Sophia returned, Martin couldn't hold back any longer. He approached her calmly, but directly. "Sophia," he began, holding the tablet in his hands, "I need to ask you about this." Sophia's face paled as she read the email. She sat down, avoiding his gaze. "I'm sorry, Martin," she said, her voice trembling. "I never meant for this to happen. It started as harmless flirting, but—" Her words trailed off, leaving Martin to fill in the blanks, revisiting the past. For Martin, the revelation was a cruel irony, a mirror of the pain he had once caused Claire. He felt anger, betrayal, and heartbreak all at once. But amidst the storm of emotions, he also felt a strange sense of clarity. He thought back to the years he had spent rebuilding himself after his affair, the lessons he had learned, and the forgiveness he had received. Now, he stood on the other side of the equation. Seeking resolution, Martin and Sophia agreed to attend couples therapy to address the rift in their relationship. Through the sessions, they uncovered the root causes of Sophia's actions: her feelings of neglect, the pressure of her growing career, and the emotional disconnect that had crept into their lives. Sophia expressed deep remorse, and Martin wrestled with whether he could forgive her. "I know what it's like to make a terrible mistake," he said during one session, "but I also know how hard it is to earn back trust. Are you willing to put in the work?" Sophia nodded, tears in her eyes. "I am, and I hope you'll let me try." Support from old friends. During this tumultuous time, Claire and Alex became a source of support for Martin. "I know how hard it is to forgive," Claire said during one of their conversations. "But I also know that it's possible if both people are committed to rebuilding." Alex added, "You've been through this before, Martin. You know the pain, but you also know the path forward, whether it's together or apart. A choice to rebuild." Martin and Sophia decided to stay together and work through their challenges. They restructured their lives to prioritize their relationship, setting boundaries with work and making time for each other. For Martin, it was a second chance to practice the forgiveness he had once sought. For Sophia, it was an opportunity to prove her commitment and rediscover the love they had built. Though the road ahead was uncertain, they both knew that healing was a journey worth taking, if they could take it together. Betrayal had been a hard pill for Martin to swallow, and the road to healing was steep. As Martin and Sophia began their slow, painful journey of reconciliation, life continued to test their commitment to one another and the lessons they had learned from the past. The strain of healing. In the weeks following their decision to stay together, Sophia and Martin faced the reality of rebuilding trust. It wasn't easy. Every conversation seemed to be laced with suspicion, and every moment of silence was heavy with unspoken thoughts. Sophia put in the effort, attending therapy, being transparent with her actions, and showing remorse, but Martin still struggled to open himself completely to her again. The scars from his own past were too fresh, and the fear of being hurt again lingered. One evening, as Martin sat in the living room, staring blankly at the wall, Sophia approached him, sitting across from him with quiet determination. "I know you're struggling," she said softly, her voice hesitant. "I can feel it, and I understand why. But I need you to tell me what I can do to make this right." Martin let out a deep sigh, rubbing his eyes. He had been grappling with the weight of his emotions, unsure of how to express the pain of betrayal again, especially when he had worked so hard to rebuild after his own mistakes. "I don't know if there's anything you can do," he admitted, his voice low. "I thought I had forgiven you before we even started this, but I don't know if I can trust again." Sophia's eyes softened with understanding, but the sadness was still there. "I'm asking you to give me a chance, not for me, but for us." Reaching out for support. One afternoon, in need of some clarity, Martin called Alex. He hadn't spoken much to him in the days since the confrontation with Sophia, and he knew he needed to hear from someone who understood the intricacies of navigating relationships after betrayal. "Alex, I don't know what to do anymore. I want to forgive her. I do, but it's hard. It's like everything I've built with her feels like it's been shaken to the core." Alex was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke with quiet strength. "Martin, forgiveness isn't a one-time thing. It's a choice you make every day. But it's also about setting boundaries, about knowing when to hold on and when to let go. You can't force yourself to forgive. It's about finding your own peace, whether that's with Sophia or without her." Martin felt a strange sense of relief in hearing Alex's words. He had known the truth all along, but hearing it from someone else made it feel more concrete. He thanked Alex, realizing that while the road ahead was unclear, he needed to find his own path, one that balanced his own healing with his desire to make his relationship with Sophia work. The breaking point weeks passed, and despite the ongoing therapy sessions and their mutual efforts, Martin's trust in Sophia remained fractured. One evening, as they were sitting in their living room, a familiar tension between them grew. Martin had just returned from an event, and Sophia had once again seemed distant, her responses curt, and her gaze often diverted. "Are you seeing him again?" Martin's voice was sharper than he intended, the question hanging heavy between them. Sophia looked startled for a moment, then sighed. "I'm not seeing anyone, Martin, but I can see how you might think that. I'm sorry I haven't been there for you in the way you need, but I need time too." Time. The word rang in Martin's ears. Time for what? Time to forgive? Time to forget? Time to heal? The cracks in their relationship seemed to be widening. He felt something break inside him, a part of him that had once believed in Sophia, in their future, but now felt lost. A decision to heal or let go. Martin went for a walk that evening, needing air, needing space. He wandered through the streets of their neighborhood, unsure of what he was seeking: clarity, peace, answers. He found himself standing in front of a familiar cafe, one he had visited countless times with Sophia before their world had shifted. Memories flooded his mind, the laughter, the long conversations, the feeling of connection. He stepped inside, ordering a coffee, and sat at a table by the window. As he looked out, a realization began to settle within him. He couldn't rebuild what was broken by clinging to the past. He needed to decide whether he was willing to move forward with Sophia, truly heal, or if it was time to part ways. The choice was his, but the uncertainty felt suffocating. Reaching out to Claire. After some time alone, Martin reached out to Claire. He hadn't spoken to her about his troubles with Sophia yet, and now he found himself needing her perspective. "Claire, I don't know what to do," he confessed when they met for coffee. "Sophia and I are stuck. I want to heal, but I feel like I'm losing myself in the process." Claire listened attentively, her eyes soft with understanding. "I've been where you are. When trust is broken, it's like everything that you thought was solid becomes fragile. But you can't rush healing, and sometimes you need to ask yourself if you're healing with the right person, or if you're just holding on to what you had." Martin's heart felt heavy, and yet her words were a comfort. It wasn't the answer he had hoped for, but it was the truth he had needed to hear. The Breaking Point. Part 2. After many more sleepless nights and emotional conversations, Martin and Sophia came to a final crossroads. They sat down together one last time, both knowing this conversation could be the end. "I can't keep living in the past, Sophia," Martin said quietly, the weight of his words sinking in. "I want to forgive you. I want to move forward. But I don't know if I can." Sophia's tears flowed freely. "I understand. I don't blame you, Martin. I've hurt you in ways I can never undo. But I love you and I'm sorry. I don't want to lose you." They both knew that love alone couldn't fix everything, that forgiveness, trust, and time were necessary for healing, and perhaps the most important decision they had to make was whether they had the strength to rebuild or to walk away from the wreckage.